feel like this is going to end horribly, but I'm Nathan, and I happen to be the brother here. And we're going to somehow make this happen and not end up in a train wreck.
Hopefully. Okay, so press options.
Okay. There's no start button on this controller.
No, it's the options button.
It's called the options button, and we're going to make two.
Yep.
So.
Are you ready to begin your journey?
Probably
Just
not.
for a quick introduction, this is a visual novel dating sim, which makes it kind of like a choose-your-own-adventure novel, but with samurai and romance.
And so this one is apparently made in 2012 by Idea Factory.
Licensed in 2012. I think it was actually made in like 2008 or something.
So this is a pretty old one,
but a goodie. I originally got this game with the intention to mock it, and now I've completed it 100% on the PS3 version. So I like it a little bit.
That's a little scary. So.
So now I get to make you play it.
I'm a little worried about this right now. Just saying.
Your wife's played it too, so now you'll know.
And this one is... You're gonna have to help me pronounce that. It's
Hakuouki.
Hakuouki.
Yep.
I would just call it Hakuouki or something like that. Okay, alright. No jabbering around. This thing's trying to beat us to the punch here, so...
Okay.
Alright. So we're gonna
begin.
Start this.
Oh, so you get to name your character.
Gotta name my character.
Chizuru is her default name, but you can name her something else if you want.
Yakimura is my family name, and I'm just Yukimura?
Yes.
Sorry. Yes, you're right. That's a U. Totally a U. How did I wish that was a U? Alright, so we're going to call her...
Look how pretty you are, Nathan.
I'm gorgeous.
You're an adorable little anime girl.
So gorgeous. You cannot... This kind of beauty and perfection takes work. Okay. I'm horsing around here. Alright. God, I keep on reaching for the analog stick, and it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Directional pad only for this thing, folks.
Yep.
Directional
Let's not
pad
get
only.
complicated with this. I mean, it is a visual novel.
So, what should we name this person?
I don't know.
I'm trying to figure out whether to go serious or ridiculous with this.
This is your self-insert character here.
Just start.
Okay.
Sure. I'm thinking we're gonna go. There.
Okay.
Could not get more
get a more
European,
Western name here.
No more westernized than that right there.
Yeah.
There we go. All right.
This is a work of fiction, by the way. Just in
Seven
case you didn't know.
elements draw inspiration from certain historical figures and events.
That's true. Press X when you're ready.
Okay. Prologue.
I'll go ahead and read the narration and Naomi's bits.
Okay.
Unless it becomes too awkward for you, and then you can read them yourself.
Okay.
So this is Kyoto. It was awfully impressive, there was no denying it. Even the simple hellos between people passing in the street seemed warm and friendly. They nodded and smiled to one another, almost as if they were family, not strangers about on errands. Still, there was something else as well, something that made the city feel strangely cold, almost as though there was a great invisible wall shutting out anyone who wandered in from the country. It wasn't particularly comfortable, I had to admit. No, that's all in my head. I had walked quite some distance to reach Kyoto, and it occurred to me that my mind and body were both very tired. Even so, tiredness was no reason for me to stand about feeling sorry for myself. I couldn't afford to, after all. Excuse me. With new, albeit forced, resolve, I tried to stop a passerby. I'm sorry, but I seem to be a bit lost. Could you...
Shall I start reading everybody else's lines?
You're welcome to, but most everybody else's lines are voiced.
Okay.
What am I supposed to do now?
In English?
No, not in English.
Well, it takes all the fun out of it.
I was lost again, but in a different sort of way. I sighed and found myself looking up at the darkening sky. The sun was beginning to set. The people I'd spoken to had been unkind, and they'd given me directions hadn't been unkind, and they'd given me directions I'd needed, but couldn't he have chosen a better time to leave the city? Apart from my father, there was only one other person in the city who I could rely on, Dr. Matsumoto.
Encyclopedia has been updated.
Yes, it has. Dr. Matsumoto was a doctor in service to the shogunate.
Encyclopedia has been updated.
I had never met him myself, but my father put a great deal of trust in the man. He told me that if I should run into any trouble during his absence, I was to contact Dr. Matsumoto. Unfortunately, Dr. Matsumoto was apparently out of town on business and would not return for some time. Was I too hasty? Perhaps I should have waited. True, it is rather rude to visit unannounced, which was why I had sent a letter ahead of me. Of course, if he'd been gone for very long, then he had almost certainly not read my letter. Perhaps I thought I should have waited for a reply before traveling alone to a city I'd never seen. But no, I knew I could not have waited any longer. Oh, I guess that's not a voice because it's a name. Anyway, go on.
Naomi.
Is something wrong, Father? He paused for a moment and looked at me. Work again? He had been leaving the house often then, sometimes for days at a time. How long will you be gone? Oh. There was no hiding my disappointment. Nonetheless, I wasn't a child anymore. I couldn't beg him not to go or some other foolishness. Yes, I'd be lonely, but I was much more worried for him. Please, Father, be careful. They say that the city of Kyoto is dangerous. He only smiled and nodded. Okay, you promise? Father kept his promise. A new letter arrived every day, and I scarcely had the time to respond before another would arrive. He told me that he worried about me home all by myself. Then the letters stopped. A whole month passed with no word from my father, and I began to worry. Father, they say Kyoto is full of ronin. It's not a safe place. Usually a samurai is paid for by their house, but ronin with no house to report to often rob people in order to make ends meet. They're nothing more than violent criminals who hide behind the image of the samurai. Such is the state of the city of Kyoto, the city of Ronin. Small wonder, then, that I worried for my father's safety. My mind would concoct horrible possibilities, and I inevitably found myself depressed and tense. First, I suppose I need to find a place to stay. Lost in thought, I hadn't noticed that night had already fallen. If I was honest with myself, I hadn't the first idea how long it might take to find my father. I'd taken some money with me, but it wasn't much. Enough to last me a month, I'd hoped, if I used it wisely. If I could find Father in that time, so much the better. If not, hopefully Dr. Matsumoto would return before my funds ran out. Should I be unable to find either of them, then it seemed I would be forced to return home. Well, at any rate, I should try and be as frugal as possible. And so I lengthened my stride and set off down the street. Fortunately for me, men's clothing was much more conducive to such a pace than my usual dress would have been. I decided early on that Kyoto was far too dangerous for a girl from the country to explore alone, and that it would be wise for me to dress like a man, or at least a boy. My disguise, such as it was, had proven successful, and I'd made it all the way to Kyoto unmolested. Perhaps that success had gone to my head, and let me think a girl dressed as a boy could explore Kyoto as she pleased. But Kyoto is not a safe place. I should have remembered that. Instead, I had somehow convinced myself that whatever dangers the city hid didn't apply to me.
Hey, kid.
I was about to discover otherwise. Eh? I spun around. In the street in front of me were three men, Ronin. Can I help you? I did my best to keep my voice calm as I reached in what I felt was a nonchalant way from my kodachi. My father had made me take lessons in self-defense. I'd kept with them and eventually done rather well. My skill was enough to defend against most attacks. Then again, perhaps it was my confidence in my skill that had put me in this situation in the first place. I'd messed up and let my guard down. My fault. There was a chance I could take them on and win, but there were three of them and one of me.
Pretty nice blade you got
Thanks.
there, kid.
Only then did I realize they were far more interested in my sword than they were in me.
Looks like a bit much for a pup like this one, am I right?
What's with the accent?
I don't know. Give it here, okay? We'll use it to defend our country.
But this is... The sword wasn't just some blade I'd picked up. It had been passed down through my family for generations. There was no way I could give it to the Ronin. Unfortunately, I had a feeling they wouldn't understand. ... In such a situation, the best decision was undoubtedly to retreat.
Running away.
And so I turned and ran as fast as my legs would carry me. Hey. Watch it.
Get back here, you little... Yeah, whatever that means. She knows who her father is. It doesn't count.
She does. Gosh, they sure don't give up easily, do they? I felt like I'd been running for quite a while, but I could still hear the Ronin behind me cursing loudly. I ducked into an alley and flattened myself against the wall. After deciding they weren't too close, I crept farther into the alley. Someone had left a couple of sheets of wood leaning against one of the houses. It was a perfect spot to hide. With luck, I thought, as I knelt down to shuffle under them, this will get me out of this mess. Huh? Something was wrong. I'd expect to hear the Ronin yelling to each other, looking for me, but seconds turned into minutes and I heard nothing. I was about to sneak out and have a look when... Yeah! So dramatic that the text box changed shape.
Yes. That was so dramatic that, yeah, it blew up the text box.
It did, yeah.
And the entire background exploded and
now it's just space.
Just space. Just space now.
They began to scream. What? My plan to investigate was immediately halted. Remaining silent and hidden was clearly more important. Still...
It's not good.
That's not good when people won't die.
People don't die. That's not a good thing.
It was then that true fear began to set in. There was something out there, something very, very dangerous, something quite possibly lethal. The possibilities were, well, my imagination conjured up no shortage of gruesome theories. Even so, I could feel the itch of curiosity. I wanted to know what was out there. Don't do it. Slowly, carefully, I edged up to the corner and looked out. Cold moonlight glared back at me from the bare blade of a drawn sword. My eyes followed the blade up to the arm that held it, clad in a coat of light blue. Had this person saved me? But no sooner had it appeared that hope was dashed.
Well, that was a maniacal laugh that no one will ever forget.
I could hear the Ronin beg for his life as they stumbled back. The person in the blue coat said nothing, just stepped forward, his sword raised.
Squelch.
Beautiful squelching sound.
Beautiful squelching sound.
That's mostly why this game is rated M, by the way, is for descriptions of violence.
Descriptions of violence.
Yeah. Not actual violence itself, but descriptions of.
Alrighty then. Well, it's definitely no Mortal Kombat, but okay, we'll go with it.
A high, screeching laugh cut through the man's scream. The blade fell through the air, more like a butcher's cleaver than a sword. No technique, no skill, just death. The scream turned suddenly wet, caught, and disappeared like air leaving a half-empty bellows.
How does a scream turn wet?
Well, I don't know.
Right then.
My eyes went wide. I just watched murder. Whatever strength adrenaline had given me was suddenly gone. My legs gave way and I crumpled to the ground. My eyes had gone so wide I thought they might never close. The Ronin had died with the first blow, but as I watched, the blades kept falling, carving deep lines into the corpse. The soft slip of a blade through flesh, the crack as it struck bone, the silent creep of blood across ground. I felt nothing from them but madness. Their only desire was raw animal violence. Whatever they were, it wasn't human. They were broken. I don't know how to make that sound. I could feel my throat closing up. I couldn't breathe.
I believe that's the sound that every anime character makes when something very, sudden and startling happens and they don't know what to do and they freeze. It's like...
Yeah! Yeah. Yeah, it is a definite sound.
It's a very, very common sound in
It's a very cliche anime sound, of
yes,
course.
very cliche.
A warm, dark smell brushed against my face. It took me a moment to recognize the coppery tang of blood. An icy bolt of fear ran down my spine, crawling its way out into my limbs and freezing me in place. I was terrified. What was I going to do? What could I do? You have to run. I forced my jaw open and drew a ragged breath. This was the only chance I'd get. I had to. Ah! But my body, still numb with fear, was less than responsive. I lurched sideways into the wood stacked against the building. With a rough clatter, it collapsed. The creatures turned, their blue coats drenched in blood. Hideous grins split their inhuman faces, and they shook with animal excitement at finding fresh prey to slaughter. Creepy. Ah! I had to run. I couldn't die yet. But my legs refused to move. That hideous, cackling laughter began again. I was going to die. My body was frozen with terror. I couldn't even scream. This was it. This was the end. What? I watched them raise their bloody swords, the moon glinting off the metal. Then there was a flash of light and the soft splash of blood. I could feel it, warm and sticky. Bile began to rise in my throat, but before disgust took hold, I heard a voice.
Really?
The words suggested disappointment, but the voice sounded happy. As he spoke, the strange man smiled, almost as if he were enjoying himself.
I only did my job. Unlike you, I take no pleasure in battle. Well, that's not a very nice thing to say.
He laughed.
You don't even bother to deny it.
The man called Saito sighed with the air of a long-suffering companion and looked over at me.
Maybe, but if you'd just sat back and let them kill her, you could have saved us both some trouble.
His tone was light, but his words confirmed my fears. I had left the frying pan, yes, but I was now in the fire.
Perhaps that decision is not ours to make. So it's Hajime
Meh.
Me
Yeah, so Hajime Saito.
To.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how you pronounce it in Japanese.
Hajime Saito.
Yes.
Okay.
Huh? Then there was someone in charge of these two? Their conversations seemed to suggest they were part of an organization of some sort. As I thought about it, I remembered hearing stories of a group of men with blue coats. Ah.
At least they're not red coats.
At least they're not red coats. No, they're very stylish blue coats. My thoughts were interrupted by a dark shape sliding into view. Hey. Oh. I swallowed hard. The moonlight shone off his smooth dark hair. For reasons I couldn't fathom, in that moment the light on his hair made me think of fluttery flower petals, almost as if the cherry trees were blooming out of season.
Luck is not your friend tonight.
His voice was cold and quiet like a blade of ice. Blue-white moonlight lit his slender face and shone from the blade he held pointed at my chest. But it wasn't the sword that made my breath catch in my throat. It was his eyes. They were fierce and hard, but somewhere behind them I could catch a glimpse of something else. There could be no doubt that he was prepared to kill me, and yet he looked troubled. Not kindness, but perhaps mercy?
Run, and I will kill you. Do you understand?
I nodded. There was no doubt he'd meant every word he said. He stared at me for a moment, then grimaced, and with a sigh he put his sword away. Oh, what? I was too surprised to stop myself from speaking, and it quickly became apparent that I wasn't the only one.
What? Wait.
Hijikata.
Hijikata?
Hijikata.
Are you sure about this? This kid saw, well, everything. That can't be good.
As he spoke to the man he'd called the Hijikata, his eyes narrowed. The man called Hijikata frowned back at him.
Shut up.
Hijikata here is our poster boy of the game, by the way.
Ah,
Yes.
ready? Now, this is a little tidbit to note here.
Okay.
These names are laid out in a traditional Japanese fashion.
No, they put the first names first and the
Okay.
surnames last, like you would a
So
Western
people are
name.
calling each other by their surnames.
Yes.
Got it.
At least most people call themselves by surnames. There are some characters that are closer friends than that, but I'll get into that later as we go on.
A little tidbit of Japanese culture there for
Yeah.
you folks.
I wasn't quite sure. Hang on.
Sorry.
Go
Sorry.
back.
You can do that?
You could do that. Hang on. I'm trying to remember
Rewind
what button
time.
it was now. History. There we go. Okay. I wasn't quite sure what they meant, but it was clear enough that what I'd seen was something they wanted to keep hidden. Still, the more they said, the more I understood, despite the fact that none of us wanted such a thing.
この子を生かしておいても厄介なことにしかならないと思いますけど
I really think it's going to come back to bite us in the ass if we let this kid go.
The way he looked at me made me feel as if he'd read my mind. Perhaps it would be best if I didn't think too hard about things I wasn't supposed to think about.
とにかく殺せばいいってもんじゃねえな
So we should just kill people so they don't bother us later. No, I'll decide what we're going to do with this kid when we get back.
俺は副長の判断に賛成
I agree with the commander. If we remain here, we are likely to be seen again.
The man they'd called Saito spoke with a quiet confidence. He glanced around, possibly looking for other witnesses. Then he looked down at the creature he'd killed, almost as though he'd forgotten the whole ordeal.
こう持ちますか実務に使えるしようがわかりません
If they have this sort of reaction to blood, then they don't seem like they'll be very practical. Damn, I didn't think they'd gotten this bad.
He peered down at the corpse, his face an emotionless mask. When he looked back up at his companions, however, his eyes narrowed.
お前ら土方とか副長とか呼んでんじゃねえよせろ
As for you two, drop the Hijikata and commander stuff. We're supposed to be keeping a low profile.
Yeah, good job with that with the jackets you're wearing.
Yeah, well, let's say we're all just gonna stamp around
It's
wearing
kind of
blue
the opposite of low
jackets.
profile.
Well, light blue, or well, technically like dark navy blue, actually shows up less in the dark than black,
Oh, I suppose.
which is just an odd fact.
That is interesting.
Well,
But I don't think light blue would be a good color to try and keep
probably
a low
not.
profile.
No, that'd glare pretty good in the sunlight.
Yeah.
You'd probably see that from a mile away.
へえ伏せるも何も回復
What?
する時点で
Come on, you can't be serious.
Oh, yeah.
You don't think our blues are a bit of a giveaway already? Well, like we didn't just mention that.
Yep. He was right. Even I had heard stories about a gang of cruel men in blue coats who cut people down in the streets. Ooh. But... No, don't think.
No.
Ignore them. I did my best to be stern with myself, but it came out sounding more like pleading than commanding. My mind swirled with thoughts and worries. I was being drawn into their world. A world where there is nothing... a world where there's nothing strange in carrying on a normal conversation in the dead of night with corpses for company.
I prefer dead people for company.
I mean, they can't talk back.
It's great. Yeah, all they do is listen. It's
They're,
great.
they're great conversationalists.
You might say they're a captive audience.
God.
死体の処理は
What shall we do with the bodies then? There doesn't seem to be any physical signs, but
Hijikata thought for a moment before he spoke.
just take their blues.
あとは山崎君が何とかしてくれ
Yamazaki
Yep.
can deal with the rest. As you wish.
大使が切り殺され
Another man cut down in the street,
と
huh?
も一大事です
Doing a great job, aren't we?
He gave a derisive bark of laughter.
Aha.
あとは俺らが黙ってりゃ
So long as we keep our mouths shut, I don't think anyone will connect us with this.
He looked directly at me when he spoke, and I got the distinct feeling that his words weren't meant for his companions. It was common for people to be murdered in Kyoto. It was a dangerous city, after all. I knew that, of course. But to see it happen, that was something else entirely. If death was such an easy thing in Kyoto, I thought, then the city itself must surely be mad.
Ah, yes. We did save you, didn't we? Aren't you going to thank us?
Huh? I didn't realize immediately that he was speaking to me. When I did, my eyes went wide. What do you mean you saved me? Well, he did have a point. Despite their threats, they had saved my life. I stood up as steadily as I could manage, brushed some of the dirt off my clothes, and bowed. Thank you very much. I apologize for not thanking you earlier. There was so much going on, I was a little confused. I glanced up at them tentatively. The man called Saito was showing some confusion of his own. His eyes were wide, and he had an expression I couldn't place. Hijikata looked as though he'd taken a bite of something sour. ... Awkward silence. I know it seems weird to say that, but he told me I should say thanks, so I looked up. Saito and Hijikata were both looking pointedly at anything but me, and the third man was shaking with laughter.
Oh man. Well, my apologies. I certainly did tell you to, didn't I?
He broke out in laughter again, so much so that he was forced to wipe a few tears from his eyes as he straightened up.
Well, you're welcome. I'm Soji Okita.
Okita.
Soji Okita.
There you go.
Nice to see a kid who knows how to be polite.
Thank you for helping me. Not quite sure what else to do, I bowed again.
What the hell do you think you're doing, Okita? Commander, I understand your concerns, but we must move.
Whatever mirth I might have inspired gone, the man called Saito spoke with quiet urgency. Hijikata nodded. The man who'd called himself Okita grabbed hold of my wrist, gave me a smile, and began to lead me down the street. His grip was a touch too tight to be friendly, his fingers like iron cables around my arm. There was no question about my situation. If I ran, I would die. Quickly, at least, but still. Even if I did as I was told, my life was in the hands of these strange men. I set my jaw and stood up as straight as I could. My eyes met those of Saito as he looked up from the blood-stained coat.
It would be best if you prepared for the worst. I doubt this will end well for you.
His words were like a dagger in my stomach. What was going to happen to me? Was I going to die? As we walked through the cold Kyoto night, I felt horror begin to crawl its way up my spine once again. The cause of my horror wasn't the gruesome end that almost certainly awaited me, but something else entirely.
Well, she can't die yet.
She can't die yet. There's a lot of the game to
We
go.
haven't even made a choice yet.
Nope. I'd spoken with these men and watched them speak to one another, not feet from a still warm corpse soaked in blood. That I had done such a thing terrified me in an altogether different way. Perhaps I thought this is what it's like to go mad.
Chapter 1.
Bum bum
We
bum.
have finished the prologue.
We finished the prologue.
And we're on to chapter 1.
Yep.
How many chapters are in this thing?
It depends on whose route you choose.
Oh, God's
I
sakes.
kind of have a theory on who you're going to choose.
January 1864.
Yes, that is our time period. Was it morning? What had happened to me? Ah, yes. Right. All at once, the events of the previous night rushed back. If only this was my room, I thought. They had tied me up quite well, so all I could do was wriggle around on the bed, twisting blankets around me. I wished, pointlessly I knew, that I were back home, waking up on my warm futon. If only this were all a very strange nightmare. But it was not. I had met those men the night before, and they had taken me with them, to the headquarters of the Shinsengumi. What will happen to me now?
Encyclopedia updated.
I sighed and laid down to await my fate. It was at that moment that the door slid open, and a kind-looking man stepped through.
I see you've woken up.
With a soft smile, he introduced himself as Inoue. Tutorial man.
Encyclopedia has been updated.
すまんな、こんな扱いで。
I'm sorry we have to treat you this way.
少し待って。
Hold on a moment. I'll loosen the ropes, alright?
His smile quirked as he removed my ropes, working quickly and skillfully. My wrists, however, were left bound. Thank you. I bowed and he let out a short laugh.
ちょっと来てくれない？
Now if you'll follow me.
今朝から幹部連中で
They've been discussing what to do with you since morning.
あんたが何を
For now, they've decided to hear what exactly it was you saw last night.
Okay. I nodded and did my best to stand up, my body still a bit unsteady after being tied up all night. The man who called himself Inoue was very polite and almost kind, but it was quite clear that I was to do as I was told. He must have been able to guess my thoughts, because he smiled at me and winked.
心配しなくても大丈夫さ。
You don't need to worry. I know they seem scary, but they're all really very nice.
I'm not sure about that. Oh,
Not sure about the very nice thing?
no.
Okay. Spoiler alert!
Spoiler alert, they're not all very nice. I wasn't sure what to think of that. Even at home I'd heard rumors of the vicious Shinsengumi. They weren't pleasant rumors. It was hard to imagine that the people in charge of such an organization were nice. Inoue led me to a room and opened the door. I stepped inside and found myself surrounded by the leaders of the Shinsengumi. Their eyes dug into me like so many knives. I froze just past the threshold and swallowed.
Good morning. I hope you slept well. She was tied up. How well could she have really have slept?
Well. Oh, I remembered him. Okita.
The encyclopedia has been updated.
Perhaps it was because I was surrounded by strange men, but it was somehow comforting to see a face I recognized.
Surrounded by strange men.
Surrounded by strange men.
That's comforting.
Welcome to a reverse harem.
Ladies, please, let us know. Would it be comforting to be surrounded by strange men? Because somehow I'm just not seeing that.
No, she's saying that it's comforting to see someone she recognized.
Aha.
Since she's surrounded by strange men.
Well, it says perhaps it was because I was surrounded by strange men, but it was somehow comforting to see a face I...
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll go with that.
Even if it was the face of a rather frightening man who was almost certainly willing and able to kill me. That's a big caveat, isn't it? It wasn't particularly comfortable. I chose my words carefully.
Really?
His face twisted sideways into a grin.
Because when I went to have a look at you earlier, you didn't budge, no matter what I poked. Oh, heavens.
Wait, what? Okita's grin widened as my face turned red. Saito rolled his eyes.
He's only teasing you. Soji didn't go anywhere near your room.
Quite silent, I stared at Okita. With his grin still playing about his face, he glanced over at Saito.
Ah, I just wanted to see you squirm a little. Not very nice of you, Hajime, calling me out like that. Silence.
I don't think Saito did anything wrong. You, on the other hand.
Shut it. You sound like a bunch of kids.
The more I learn about Japanese, the more I realize how rude Hijikata's speech patterns are. Hijikata's voice broke to no further insubordination. Okita shrugged and then was silent, but the smile stayed in his eyes.
So, Hijikata, this is your witness?
The man who spoke was, well, he looked more like a boy than a man. I'd imagined the leaders of the Shinsengumi to be old, or at least middle-aged men, but they all looked quite young. In fact, they looked rather like a group of young thugs.
He's a real stick, huh? Just a kid.
That was Toto.
Toto.
Yes.
Toto.
Toto, like the dog from Wizard of Oz.
Alright.
But not.
But not. Definitely not.
On our way home from my bed, on our way from my bed, Inoue had given me a brief description of the people I was about to meet. Supposedly, Toto was the youngest captain in the Shinsengumi.
You're calling him a kid? Haisuke? That's
Hisuke.
rich. Hisuke.
Hisuke. Yep.
That's rich.
He chuckled as he spoke, but the way he looked at me suggested that there was little he missed, despite his humor.
Right you are. To anybody else, I'll bet the two of you just look like another pair of scrawny little brats.
The man across from him nodded with brows drawn, as if he was quite serious about the subject. However, I remembered Inoue telling me that the two of the men in particular were somewhat immature, to put it nicely. He had said the one with the short hair was Nagakura, and the other with longer hair was Harada.
Leave off, you grumpy old bastards. The hell I will, boy. You think you can get away with talking to us like that? Besides, I'm hardly mature enough to be called old, Shinpachi. Maybe, but not me. You son of a bitch. I thought we were friends. Ah, come on, Shin. Wouldn't an adult get so worked up over something like that?
Their back and forth had the feel of a routine that long predated my arrival, but they couldn't quite hide the odd, inquisitive glance in my direction.
This just kind of seems like stepped in here expecting to hear a conversation, like a big deliberation of wise old men about what we should do about this person. Instead, we got this.
Yep, instead we get this. I could sense something other than simple curiosity, though. A feeling of animosity or resentment, perhaps. Despite their cheerful levity, they had not forgiven my presence among them. Suddenly, I wanted very much to go home. I wanted to leave that place and never return. My chest tightened, and I looked down at the floor, hoping that I might just wake up at home in my bed.
I apologize for all this frightening behavior. Please, don't give them the pleasure of unsettling you.
And here we have the Token Glasses character.
The Token Glasses character.
Oh.
Glad to see that we can have stereotypes, even in a Otome game.
Of course there are stereotypes in an Otome game. His voice was calm and warm, and I felt myself relax, even if only a little.
Are you serious? You're the scariest out of all of us, Sanan.
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 There was the faintest trace of a smirk on Hijikata's lips. As he finished speaking, the rest of the men nodded solemnly in agreement. I found it hard to believe this man could actually be as scary as they all seemed to think.
Always be aware of the smiling one with glasses.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just, look at the Joker. He always had a smile on his face.
it's true.
Oh, how
Beware the quiet
crude.
ones.
I can understand their feelings, but that even our demon of a commander should think so. I feel like that's an ominous saying.
They did call him the Demon Commander, like that's a historical fact. The man called Sanan smiled as he spoke and leaned back, his riposte delivered. They didn't spell riposte correctly.
Well, we are creeping up on our 30-minute mark, so
Probably over that, actually.
yeah, we should probably cut this as an
yeah.
episode for now, and we will see everybody in episode 2 of whatever this game is called.
Woo!